Hi there, I'm going to give you 10 tips when it comes to workflow with Tinkercad. And I'm by no means a Tinkercad expert, but I've learned a few things here and there that help as far as being able to move quickly throughout this platform. I'm going to grab a hold of an object just so we can get started here. I'm going to pull it onto my Workplane. And the first tip I'm going to give you is to use the control button. By using the control button, what this allows you to do is if you hold it down and you use your mouse to move around, or you use your touchpad to move around, and you click and drag around, it allows you to move around. This does the same function as this button, but it eliminates the need of you to go up here. So just holding down control does the exact same thing and allows you to rotate around the plane. If you're not holding control, all it does is allow you to select items. Tip number 2 is instead of using the zoom icons, you use the scroll option. So when you scroll, it actually does zoom in and zoom out. On a Chromebook touchpad, it's 2 fingers you swipe up and 2 fingers you swipe back at the exact same time. I'm using a mouse that has a scroll wheel on it. And so this is handy when you're navigating, especially when you use it in conjunction with the control button. Sorry if I'm making anyone sick, because then you can zoom in and zoom out on specific parts. So I can zoom in, zoom out, and see what's going on with my work. My third tip is that you utilize the duplicate option. What this allows you to do is if you have a shape that you have a specific size, I'm going to grab a hold of this guy right here, and I'm going to stretch him out like so. And let's say you need several of these exact same objects, then what you can do very simply is just make sure you select it and hit the duplicate button or Control D. And when you do that, then you have another object just like so. Another quick way that you can make this work is if you hit the Control D combination, and then it'll automatically start building it out for you. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control D again, and it pops one out over here, but I'm going to move this guy over here and snap to it. And we'll see what he does from here when I hit Control D again, and it pops out over here. This is especially handy if you're trying to create the exact same object and they have specific spacing. It'll just keep continuing your spacing pattern as you move along throughout your Workplane. My fourth tip is that you specify sizes. That can be easily done a couple of different ways. One way is you can utilize this tool right here. You can even type specifically what you want the length and width to be and the height. But another way to do that is to click directly on the boxes on the sides. When you click on the boxes, you can see what the length and width are. So if I want to customize this, I can click directly in this box. I can make this exactly 30. So that way it is 30 millimeters, 3 centimeters. And so this allows you to specifically say what you want it to be. So if you want this to be taller than 13 millimeters, then you can go ahead and just make it, I don't know, 15. So you can specify exactly what you want those measurements to be. That makes it a lot easier than trying to click and drag exactly what dimensions you want. If you can customize and specify using the numbers, then you get nice, even measurements. My fifth tip is that you use arrows to move objects around. So if you need to move an object around, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move the object. But as you notice, that's a pretty big jump. So if you need to customize and you need to specify short little movements, you actually have this snap grid right here. When you click on this, this specifies how much movement you get from an arrow key. So I can make it that it moves a whole millimeter. I can make it that it moves half a millimeter at a time, a quarter of a millimeter, or a tenth of a millimeter at a time. If I set it at a tenth, it'll move very small movements. That way I don't have to click and drag the object directly next to another object. Another feature I'm going to share with you is the ability to select all objects and move them. So if I have multiple objects on my screen here, and I want to make some adjustments as far as where things are placed, I can actually move all of these objects all in one shot. All I do is draw an invisible box around the objects like so, and instantly I'm able to move all of these objects at the exact same time. My seventh tip is to select all and resize. Not only can you select all to move, we can also use this to resize your objects all in one shot. This allows for great options in scaling your projects. Which brings me to my 8th tip, and that is to group items. You can group these items by using the Control G option. When you do that, they become one object and you cannot separate them. This makes it very convenient for movement. This makes it very convenient for keeping things together, but you can still resize all of these objects at the exact same time. And no matter what, when you click on one, you will select all of the objects that you grouped together. If you need to ungroup them, you can select the ungroup option here. If you want to select a couple of objects, you can just draw an invisible box around those objects that are touching, and then it'll be able to group just those items and move them around. My next tip is to utilize something called holes. To make this into a box, very simply, is I can duplicate the object first, and now I have one just like it. I can take this object and I can shrink it down a little bit. Let's make it 35, and I'm going to shrink this dimension as well. I'm going to make this one 35 as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it so that way this object is in the middle of the other one, roughly. Now you could get more precise if you wanted to, but for time's sake, I'm not going to. I'm going to adjust the height here a little bit. Since I adjusted the height a little bit, it is now floating inside that shape. When I want to make this a hole, I just merely select the hole option here, and now it's a hollow shape, and I could put objects inside that box. My last tip for workflow is when you have something exactly the way you want it, and it's set the way you want, you just merely need to add items around it or on top of it, then what I would recommend is locking editing on an object. So if I select these two objects like so, and I use this lock feature right here, then I have the option to be able to not change that object. I can no longer move it, I can no longer resize it, it is now merely locked. This allows me to take other objects and build upon it without accidentally bumping or moving the object that I'm working around. And those are my 10 tips when using Tinkercad.